I'm not going to quit my job. I'll never quit my students. I love them. I need to be with them, and I love what I do, but I don't know if I'm going to make it the year. And quite frankly, I don't know any teacher who does.
Welcome back. That's Lisa Levitin, who we heard from earlier in the program. She's a teacher in Ottawa who is struggling. Safety restrictions, physical distancing, and virtual learning have all forced a major recalibration of how schools work in this country. So let's talk about what's working and what's not working. Join me now, infectious diseases specialist Dr. Suman Chakrabarti and Dr. Lenora Saxinger. Hello to the both of you. Dr. Saxinger, maybe I'll start with you, because physical distancing, I mean, that's one thing that came up over and over again as something that's not working. A majority of teachers who, reached out to us telling us that kids aren't actually able to maintain physical distance at all times. What's your reaction to that?
I'm not really surprised by that. I think that earlier on, we did see a lot of European and other jurisdictions that went back to school before us and had earlier epidemics where they used really stringent measures and drew circles on the ground for the children to stay in, and they really found it unworkable. And a lot of places seem to have walked back that part of it. I think partly because it's not been clearly shown how much it adds to protection in that setting, and also because it's kind of unenforceable. And I think there's a lot of stress associated with having kids have to change their behavior that much versus other measures like symptom screening and cohorting and things that also can reduce risk.
Right. So Dr. Chakrabarti, maybe you can help me understand something here. So take a look at this. This is data that we have from the Ontario government as of this morning. So of nearly 5,000 public schools in the province, more than 4,000 have not had a single confirmed coronavirus case. And of the schools that do have cases, it's almost never more than 1, 2, or 3 cases. So in my mind, I'm trying to process that. And that sounds to me like, in a way, it's an infection control success story, right? But it sort of begs the question. I mean, was the threat in schools overblown?
This is the public health and preventative paradox. When you look at the situation, if you have a successful preventative campaign for public health, the result is nothing happens. Now, that's not to say that these preventative measures are perfect. Of course, there are going to be cases. And unfortunately, we will see, the occasional more school closure. But for the most part, with the hard work of our teacher colleagues as well as students themselves, things seem to be going okay, and there's a precedent for that. We saw that in other countries as well in Europe. So this is a good start, but there's still a lot more of school year to go.
But can we say then definitively that the infection rate in schools isn't what's driving infections in the community, it's sort of flipped?
Although we are seeing more transmission across communities, across Canada, here quite severely actually, the contribution of schools appears to remain very small, as my colleague said, with really small case numbers per listed outbreak as well. So I think that the picture that's evolving really is that schools are not driving transmission, but they kind of mirror what's happening in the community more so.
Okay, Dr. Saxinger, here's a question for you that we received from Brinley Fellows, a student in Toronto. Have a listen.
I was wondering what you think we can expect next year to look like in terms of in-person and online learning.
And that's a decision that both students and parents will have to sort of face and constantly reevaluate. So what's your answer there?
Well, I mean, I think none of us have a crystal ball, but the features that we're going to be looking for are the experience over the rest of the fall and winter, what happens with school openings and closures, and actually, importantly, whether or not we can actually start getting to the question of which of the protective measures are the most high yield ones. And how we can try to continue to normalize the school experience if possible and still maintain safety for kids and teachers. So the third thing will be whether or not there's a vaccine available, which might happen partway through like the second quarter or later of 2021. And that would also really change the way that we look at the risks. So I think it's going to be really dynamic, and the full span of possibilities is still open as far as I can tell.
Right. So clearly a tough question to answer, but Dr. Chakrabarti, what if I put it to you this way? What if you had to answer that question now? I mean, is it a better idea to put your kid in class in a physical environment or do the virtual learning, given what we know about the infection rate in schools?
I think looking at it now, I would have been comfortable at the beginning as well with my own kids. I think that right now we're seeing that, again, the infection rate has not exploded in the schools. I'm not saying that it can't later on, but I think that right now it's safe. I think that also in-person learning is such an important part of our children's development. So I would want my kids to be in class. Things might change in a couple of months, but for right now, that's how I would answer.
But how would you then, let me ask you this, how would you improve things? Because Dr. Saxinger has made the point in a couple different ways that there are a whole lot of different vectors, right? And physical distancing is just one of them. So knowing what we know, what would you fine tune about, I don't know, the way we control infections in schools going forward?
That's a really good point. I think the thing that is what actually can we relax, as Dr. Saxinger was saying, because I think that there are things that are making school very unenjoyable, no extracurricular activities. But if you look at these things, you might see that some extracurricular activities might be just as safe as they were before. And, reintroducing can bring some of that enjoyment back. Maybe we can have a bit of a bigger class size if you have good ventilation.
Doctors, wonderful to talk to you and wonderful to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.